Even Robert Redford, who is renowned for his nearly faultless career and well-chosen parts, has some regrets. On paper, his 1980 film seemed promise, but it ended up being something he would rather forget. And many who knew him well said that she was the reason for it all. What actually transpired behind the scenes, and why does Redford continue to keep it to himself? Come along as we explore the little-known backstory of the film that Robert Redford wishes he had never made. Robert Redford's making. On August 18, 1936, Robert Redford was born in Santa Monica, California. His mother was a housewife, while his father was a milkman who eventually became an accountant. Redford had a rather modest upbringing and was raised in a working-class neighborhood. Despite growing up in beautiful Southern California, he had a difficult upbringing. He had trouble staying disciplined in school and didn't always get along with people in positions of control. His teachers said he was smart yet unyielding. Even back then, he was innovative, but he wasn't always a rule follower. Redford's artistic pursuits were fostered by his mother, who died when he was only a teenager. Her passing had a profound impact on him, and some claim it influenced the more somber and reclusive demeanor he would grow up to have. Even as a child, he felt different from those around him. He carried this sentiment with him, and it eventually manifested itself in his work and interactions with other film industry professionals. His preference was always to do things his own way, and he didn't hesitate to assert himself. Redford experienced a period of rebellion in his early 20s. He attended the University of Colorado for a short time, but left because of his bad grades and excessive partying. He then went to Europe before coming back to the U.S. to attend the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York. He started to take acting seriously there. At the Pratt Institute, he also studied painting, but ultimately, he was drawn to the stage. Early in the 1960s, he achieved his first significant success on stage. Redford played the lead in Broadway's Barefoot in the Park, directed by Neil Simon. Redford received praise for his performance, and the play was a success. His charm, attractive looks, and effortless manner were well received by the audience. This led to opportunities on television, where he starred in a number of dramas and anthology programs. He immediately established a reputation for being considerate, trustworthy, and dedicated to his profession. In 1969, Redford got his big break in movies when he co-starred with Paul Newman as the Sundance Kid in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. He became well known because to this movie. With Newman, the combination was electrifying. Redford counterbalanced Newman's more light-hearted energy on film with a calm, silent intensity. Together, viewers adored them, and Hollywood noticed. Robert Redford was suddenly a powerful force rather than just a rising star. Redford established himself in Hollywood throughout the ensuing years with a series of hit movies. He played journalist Bob Woodward in All the President's Men, The Way We Were with Barbra Streisand, and The Sting Again with Paul Newman. His breadth and seriousness as an actor were demonstrated by these roles. They also contributed to the public's perception of Robert Redford as the Hollywood golden boy, handsome, gifted, and naturally charming. However, the man beneath that facade was intensely control-oriented. Redford's interests extended beyond acting. He desired to be involved in every aspect of the creative process. He was meticulous about characters, screenplays, and even editing decisions. He frequently provided directors with criticism and occasionally went above and beyond. Redford occasionally suggested significant modifications that changed the overall tone of a movie or re-edit portions himself. Some viewed this as dedication, while others thought it was overbearing or domineering. Redford's influence increased along with his notoriety. He gained notoriety for being extremely picky about his roles and co-workers. He rejected a lot of high-profile movies because he didn't trust the filmmakers or the plot. He desired to work on projects that were more than merely box office hits. They needed meaning and purpose. In Hollywood, where many actors were more concerned with fame and money, this set him apart. Redford's perfectionism, though, occasionally caused arguments. Producers who attempted to rush him or alter his vision caused him to fight. Particularly from those who did not share his enthusiasm for storytelling, he disliked being told what to do. He had strong opinions and didn't hesitate to voice them, which made him challenging for some directors. It was occasionally annoying for co-stars who wanted a more relaxed, cooperative environment to work with him. Redford enjoyed discipline and order on set. which occasionally fell short of other actors despite these difficulties. Redford continued to be one of the most admired actors in the business. Even when others attempted to guide him in alternative ways, he was able to keep control of his career thanks to his quiet confidence and keen intuition. He began directing as well, which allowed him even more artistic flexibility. Ordinary People, his debut feature film, was the Academy Award winner for Best Director. This demonstrated that his strong determination and meticulous attention to detail were more than just personality attributes. They contributed to his accomplishments. One of the things that made Redford so intriguing was his ability to strike a balance between his private authority and public appeal. He typically had the last word, but he was never the loudest person in the room. Even though they didn't always agree with him, his co-workers frequently expressed their appreciation for him. He had no interest in gossip or Hollywood politics. He aspired to produce quality movies. According to his own terms, Redford's success came from more than simply skill. It also came from vision, discipline, and the unspoken strength that comes from knowing what you want and pursuing it. He meticulously constructed his career, avoiding scandals and maintaining his seclusion while being totally committed to the work that was important to him. Some of the biggest stars in Hollywood, however, found it difficult to collaborate with him because not everyone liked his style. Love and turmoil. Robert Redford has always been regarded as a quiet, introspective individual. Although he was viewed by many as a Hollywood star who was successful, attractive, and talented, his personal life revealed a more nuanced picture. Redford has 2 marriages, and each one reveals a different aspect of him. His first marriage, which lasted for nearly 30 years, was characterized by increasing emotional tension and distance. Much later in life, his second marriage appeared more stable and tranquil. We can better understand Redford as an actor and as a person who frequently battled to strike a balance between love, fame, and his need for independence by examining these 2 marriages. In 1958, Redford wed Lola Van Wagenen, his first wife. He was a young, inexperienced actor at the time, still figuring out who he was. Lola was a Utah-born Mormon who valued stability and family. She stood by his side as he put a lot of effort into developing his career, encouraged him to pursue his goals, and believed in him. Their marriage was characterized by optimism in its early years, and the kind of assistance that many aspiring artists require. Together, they had 4 children, but one of them passed away when still a baby, a tragedy that profoundly affected them both. Redford was not yet the well-known actor that everyone knew at this time. He was working on stage, playing little parts, and gradually becoming well-known in the entertainment industry. Redford was able to concentrate on his business because Lola took care of the majority of the household duties, including raising the kids. It appeared to be a fruitful collaboration. She served as his cornerstone, and he was constructing a large project. However, as Redford's notoriety increased in the late 1960s and early 1970s, things started to shift. Everything in his life changed in 1969 when he became a major star because to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. All of a sudden, he felt like he was being dragged in all directions. Movie sets, press coverage, social gatherings, and fresh prospects. Redford became one of the most well-known faces in the world, but Lola remained out of the spotlight. They were separated by the strain of celebrity. Redford's concentration on his work increased. He had a reputation for giving every endeavor his whole attention. He put his all into everything he did, whether it was producing, directing, or acting. Long hours and extended periods of time away from home were frequently required for this degree of attention. His emotional support system, Lola, began to fade into the background of his hectic life. Despite staying married for years, they were emotionally estranged. Rumors about Redford's infidelity also circulated. Although he rarely responded to these accusations in public, some of his intimate associates implied that it was hard to remain totally dedicated because of Hollywood's reputation, frequent travel, and temptation. Redford also became increasingly emotionally distant during this period. Much though he was already a private person, he grew much more so throughout these years. He disliked talking about personal things, even with people who were close to him. According to reports, Lola sensed this separation, which ultimately damaged their relationship. Following 27 years of marriage, Redford and Lola were divorced in 1985. There was no public drama involved. The separation was civil and calm. Lola went on to concentrate on her own work in historical and environmental study, while Redford kept up his privacy protection. The marriage had come to a stage when they required different things, despite the fact that they had spent many years together and raised a family. Redford fell in love again years later, but this time it was very different. He met German-born artist Sibyl Zagers in the middle of the 1990s, who shared his passion for the arts and the natural world. Their relationship started out slowly and in silence. Redford handled things more slowly this time around, in contrast to the fast-paced existence he had led in his younger years. Before getting married in 2018, they shared a home for more than 20 years. Redford seemed to fit in well with Sibyl's exclusion from the Hollywood world. She had a job as a painter and was serene and creative. Their slower pace of life, common ideals, and respect for one another formed the foundation of their partnership. Redford had distanced himself from the spotlight by this time in his life. He was spending more time at his Utah ranch, picking ventures more carefully and concentrating on environmental issues. This existence was encouraged by Sibyl, and the two of them established a calm routine that provided Redford with the seclusion he had always desired. A lot of observers observed that Redford appeared more comfortable in their second collaboration. There was more emotional equilibrium, less public scrutiny, and less strain. His second marriage showed a guy who had already accomplished his aims and now desired serenity, whereas his first marriage was characterized by the vigor and drive of a man establishing his profession. That was supplied by Sibyl, and their bond has been solid and steady. Even while he eventually found some peace in his personal life, not all of his professional relationships were easy, and he had some of his most heated arguments with Hollywood's biggest stars. Versus Redford and Paul Newman. One of Hollywood's most cherished on-screen collaborations was formed by Robert Redford and Paul Newman. In Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, their relationship was innate, endearing, and vivacious. Viewers enjoyed seeing them interact with one another. The calm, self-assured Newman besides the more reserved, solemn Redford. Despite being distinct kinds of actors, they were a fantastic match. On screen, their friendship appeared natural, and the movie's popularity made them one of the most recognizable pairs in cinematic history. They collaborated once more on The Sting, another huge smash, a few years later. In addition to winning numerous Academy Awards, it demonstrated Redford and Newman's unique talent. For a while, fans and critics believed the two were close in real life. They genuinely respected one another and relished their initial collaboration. During filming, they even pulled practical jokes on one another and made fun of their disparate acting styles. Everything appeared to be going well on the surface, but there were early indications of stress behind the scenes. Redford grew increasingly involved in the artistic aspects of filmmaking and more guarded of his reputation as his stardom began to grow. He wanted a say in how things were done, not merely to act. By the 1960s, however, Newman had already established himself as a great star and was accustomed to top billing and leading parts. There was a silent dispute about whose name should be shown in the credits when Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid were released. Although Redford's performance elevated the film and many felt he should have received equal credit, Newman received the highest billing. A competitive dynamic between the two was established at that point. Redford's passion in directing and creative control only intensified when the 1970s rolled around. Acting roles were not all he desired. He wanted to influence the entire narrative, not simply contribute to it. But Newman had always been the focal point of his endeavors. He was seasoned, self-assured, and accustomed to taking charge. They began to drift apart quietly as a result of their divergent perspectives on their respective jobs in Hollywood. Despite the fact that there was no public disagreement, Redford and Newman collaborated less and less. Fans anticipated they would rejoin for another movie, but they didn't. Their connection became more formal behind closed doors. Mutual admiration persisted, and they continued to praise one another in interviews. However, they no longer spent as much time together as they had in their younger years. Redford once acknowledged that as their paths diverged due to job and life, they drifted apart. After Newman passed away in 2008, Redford later paid tribute to him, describing him as a wonderful friend and a talented actor. Although their closeness gradually changed to a more respectful, distanced relationship, it was evident that their regard never diminished. Their collaboration produced two iconic movies for the world. However, the friendship itself did not endure as long. We'll then examine Redford's more acerbic conflict with Jack Nicholson, a totally different kind of co-star. A disagreement with Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson and Robert Redford were two of Hollywood's most well-known figures of the 1970s. Despite being prominent men, they couldn't have been more dissimilar. Redford was renowned for being composed, well-mannered, and in charge. Nicholson was noisy, untamed, and erratic. There was obviously tension between them, even if they were never open adversaries. Behind the scenes, their personalities, acting philosophies, and approaches to filmmaking clashed. A silent rivalry that persisted for years was the outcome. When both performers were vying for the lead part in The Great Gatsby in the early 1970s, it was a significant event that demonstrated their rivalry. The movie was based on the well-known book by F. J. Gatsby's part in Scott Fitzgerald was a highly sought-after one. Although Redford ultimately won the part, Nicholson was also given careful consideration. Some reports claim that Redford, who Nicholson felt was too stiff or emotionless for the role, won the gig, frustrating Nicholson. Their growing separation was exacerbated by this. However, Redford had a negative opinion of Nicholson's conduct both on and off the set. Redford liked a concentrated, business-like setting. He enjoyed planning, practicing, and following through. He expected others to be as serious as he was, and he didn't like surprises on set. Nicholson's strategy was very different. He flourished amid disorder. He enjoyed improvising, switching lines, and abruptly altering the tone of a scene. This made him intriguing and new to some directors, but it felt chaotic and unmanageable to Redford. The fact that Nicholson frequently made hurtful remarks behind the scenes didn't help. Those close to Nicholson claim that he once labeled Redford wooden in private chats, despite the fact that the two performers never collaborated directly on a big motion picture. He frequently poked fun of Redford's somber, reserved demeanor and felt that his manner lacked emotional depth. Even though Redford didn't publicly address these remarks, he was known to avoid performers who made fun of him, even in private. In actuality, Redford and Nicholson portrayed two rather different kinds of actors in the same time period. Redford performed best in films with a lot of structure and meticulous planning. He appreciated subtlety and accuracy. Nicholson enjoyed freedom, emotion, and turmoil. His most prominent parts, such as those in The Shining and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, were dramatic and occasionally outrageous. It was difficult for Redford to be around that kind of energy. Depending on the tone they desired, directors and producers frequently choose one or the other for projects. The quiet force with depth and charm was Redford. Nicholson was the unpredictable, audacious spark. They were unlikely to ever get along because of these disparities, and ultimately they never did. Throughout their careers, the two stayed apart, frequently circling the same parts and projects, but never ending up on the same set. Redford might have shied away from outright confrontation, but he wasn't scared to turn down people he couldn't collaborate with, including Nicholson. We'll then examine Redford's quiet confrontation with Gene Hackman, another powerful actor. Gene Hackman and Robert Redford. Among the most renowned actors of their time were Gene Hackman and Robert Redford. They were both talented, diligent, and very committed to their profession. However, their personalities and morals couldn't have been more dissimilar. They never collaborated on a significant project, despite living in the same time period and frequently receiving comparable recognition. It wasn't a coincidence. It ultimately boiled down to a simple personality conflict and a shared disinterest in interacting with one another. Known for his cool and collected demeanor, Redford frequently maintained a professional distance when working on set. He lacked emotional depth in both his performing and personal relationships. In contrast, Hackman gave each role he played a certain raw intensity. His intense, occasionally violent energy made his performances impactful, but it could also make him challenging to deal with. Hackman's intensity was apparently a bit too much for Redford. He believed that both on and off camera, Hackman could be harsh and erratic. Redford also didn't impress Hackman. He frequently chastised Hollywood's elite for their phony charm. Growing up in the working class, Hackman was proud of his gritty, more realistic persona. Actors who appeared overly polished or overly preoccupied with status didn't inspire him. Hackman never specifically criticized Redford in interviews. However, some close to him claimed that he thought Redford was aloof, possibly even conceited. It was commonly assumed that Redford was one of the actors he had in mind when he once characterized some of them as being cold and domineering. Over the years, the two had opportunities to collaborate. According to reports, Redford offered Hackman parts in some of his own directing endeavors, such as Quiz Show and A River Runs Through It. Hackman rejected them. He disliked the tone of the projects and felt uneasy working under Redford's direction. Redford's films tended towards quiet, contemplative narrative, while Hackman favored gritty, emotionally charged characters. Their working approaches were just too different, and their tastes didn't align. Additionally, Hackman detested what he referred to as the Hollywood elite. He disliked public appearances, networking, and award shows. Redford was a prominent presence in Hollywood circles while being more private than other celebrities. He won Oscars, had his own film festival, and was close to influential figures in the business. All of that seemed out of touch and fake to Hackman. Redford represented an industry that he didn't want to be a full part of. In spite of all of this, they never argued in public. Redford didn't say much about Hackman, and Hackman didn't say much either. However, industry insiders were aware that the two were incompatible. From a distance, they appreciated each other's work, but they were not interested in collaborating. It wasn't about a single incident or argument. It was just a matter of two people with strong opinions not getting along. He regrets the 1980 movie. One of the most famous romantic couples in movie history was Robert Redford and Barbra Streisand. However, their working relationship was anything but cordial behind the scenes of The Way We Were. A political activist and a relaxed writer, two complete opposites, fell in and out of love in the film. Their chemistry was evident on screen. But off-screen, things were difficult, tense, and frigid. Their professional conflict was profound and protracted, although it wasn't very dramatic. It affected them both and clarified why, in spite of calls from the public for a reunion, they never collaborated again. Redford was not initially considered for the Hubble Gardner role. From the start, Barbra Streisand, who was already deeply involved in the film's creation, wanted him. Redford, in her opinion, was the only actor who could portray her on screen in a way that felt genuine. Redford, however, wasn't instantly intrigued. He was actually apprehensive. He was concerned that Streisand, who was well known for her talent as well as her strong personality and command over her projects, would take center stage in the movie. Redford was not interested in playing a supporting role in a movie that seemed like a vanity endeavor. He eventually consented to accept the position, but only under specific circumstances. Some accounts claim that one of those requirements was that certain elements of the script be changed. Redford believed that Hubble's character was not completely formed. He desired a stronger emotional arc, more screen time, and more complexity. He reportedly rewrote a number of sequences with author Arthur Lawrence to make the narrative feel more evenly distributed between the two protagonists. At least in public, Streisand agreed, but the tension was already established. The difference in their methods became even more apparent as they were filming. Streisand gave her all to the part, frequently advocating for more dramatic and poignant passages. During takes, she enjoyed experimenting with different emotional tones and improvising lines. Redford, on the other hand, favored following the script. He enjoyed subtlety and control. Repeatedly performing situations with varying emotional extremes didn't appeal to him. He believed that the film's power lay in its subdued, silent moments rather than in its dramatic performances or emotional outbursts. Friction resulted from this stylistic divergence. According to reports, Redford found working with Streisand to be tiring. Although he appreciated her talent, he didn't enjoy the amount of control she attempted to exert over the movie. She might be pushy and self-centered, he believed. Redford, in turn, seemed too icy and aloof to Streisand. She claimed that he frequently avoided her and failed to interact with her at poignant situations as she had wanted. They had little off-screen interaction and less communication. Their relationship was regarded as friendly at best and fragile at worst by those who worked on the movie. There was no friendliness between them, yet they were not overtly antagonistic. They performed well, hit their targets, and maintained their professionalism. But behind the camera, there was no camaraderie. It appeared like their only genuine connection occurred while the cameras were filming. They parted ways as soon as the scene was finished. The Way We Were was a big success in spite of everything. Many viewers thought that the intense emotional tension they witnessed on screen was the result of intense human chemistry, and they praised the movie. In actuality, it was the product of two resolute professionals who struggled to collaborate, yet persevered to produce a movie that touched viewers everywhere. Refusal to get back together. Many people anticipated that Barbra Streisand and Robert Redford would work together again after the 1973 hit movie The Way We Were. Because of their enduring on-screen connection, viewers were excited to see them together once more. It was more than just public demand for Streisand. She genuinely thought that the magic they had worked might occur once more. She advocated for a fresh romantic endeavor with Redford or a follow-up to The Way We Were during the 1980s and 1990s. Between their characters or in a new environment. She thought there was more emotional ground to explore and more tale to tell. Streisand made a concerted effort to win Redford over. She proposed ideas, collaborated with authors, and even attempted to modify a couple scripts to play to each of their strengths. However, Redford turned her down each time. He made it obvious that he wasn't interested, yet he never rejected someone harshly. Redford responded in the same way in other interviews throughout the years. It only took one movie. He said it wasn't personal. He just thought the first movie said all it needed to convey. But it was personal to Streisand. She had given everything she had to The Way We Were, both the backstage development and the performance. She connected emotionally with Redford's character and the plot. She later acknowledged how devastated she was by his rejection to collaborate with her once more. In a 2016 interview, Streisand expressed her disappointment and hurt at his refusal to get back together. She acknowledged that she never really comprehended what went wrong. It had been a wonderful partnership, in her opinion. Redford, however, had a quite different perspective on the event. It was exhausting for him to work with Streisand. Her emotional intensity overwhelmed him, even though he appreciated her talent and determination. In interviews, he expressed his desire to avoid experiencing such situation once more. Redford was a reserved individual who appreciated quiet concentration and composed control on set. Streisand has a powerful presence, emotion, and spontaneity. That made their movie fantastic, but it also made their collaboration very challenging. Redford and Streisand consistently discussed each other's work with respect, even in the face of all the conflict. They never publicly disparaged one another. Redford's acting skills were frequently commended by Streisand, describing him as extraordinarily natural and ideal for the Hubble role. In response, Redford referred to Streisand as brilliant and claimed that she evoked strong feelings on screen. They respected each other on a professional level, but their admiration was accompanied by distinct emotional boundaries. Please remember to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell if you liked this glimpse into the true drama behind the screen. This will ensure that you never miss any more unseen tales from the Haiti of Hollywood.